Doctor Doom. Even if you've never cracked open a single comic book, the name alone makes you pause. It's one of those names that doesn't just sound comic booky, it sounds like it was stamped into existence already fully formed, like a warning label on the universe. Unlike a lot of Marvel villains, Doom is more than just a bad guy in a mask. He's a force of nature. He's ambition wrapped in armor. He's arrogance given a PhD. He's the sort of character who believes he could rule the entire world, the entire universe, better than anyone else. Today, I want to talk about the greatest villain in comic book history. With his multiple retcons, writers, artists, and decades of use, this is one character that has been retold more than there are episodes of The Simpsons, and that's a lot. So let's rewind the clock. Long before the armor, long before the mask, before the iconic rivalry with Reed Richards, let's go back to Latveria, a tiny fictional nation somewhere in Eastern Europe, tucked away in the mountains, where fairy tale forests and brutal dictatorships live side by side. Latveria is where Victor von Doom was born, and it is where his legend begins. Victor's parents were not nobles or scientists. They weren't people of influence. They were outsiders, Romani travelers, part of a community that lived on the fringes of Latverian society. His mother, Cynthia, was a woman gifted with mystical talent. Not a stage magician, not a cheap trickster, but a sorceress. The real deal. Unfortunately, in Marvel stories, when you mix ambition and magic, you usually end up owing somebody something, and in Cynthia's case, she crossed paths with none other than Mephisto. Yes, the big red demon who basically functions as Marvel's version of the devil. She tried to use her powers to protect her people, to strike back at their oppressors, but making deals with hell has never gone well in the history of all fiction. Predictably, it ended in tragedy. She died when Victor was still young, leaving behind not just grief, but a kind of wound in his life, a mystery he would spend the rest of his days trying to solve. Victor's father, Werner, was different. He wasn't a sorcerer, he wasn't a fighter, he was a healer, a man of medicine who tried to do good in a world that rarely rewarded it. There's this heartbreaking story about him being forced to flee with Victor into the cold after being blamed for the death of a noblewoman he tried to treat. He eventually froze to death, leaving Victor an orphan. So by the time Victor was still a boy, both of his parents were gone. He was left with grief, anger, and this seed of obsession. He believed his mother's soul had been damned to Mephisto, and he made it his life's mission to free her, no matter the cost. That right there is the core of Doom. Not evil for evil's sake, but a mix of personal tragedy, unshakable arrogance, and obsession so strong it could bend the world. From an early age, Victor showed himself to be brilliant. Not just book smart, but freakishly once-in-a-generation genius smart. He could build machines out of scraps, devices that baffled the adults around him. One of the first things he created was actually a machine designed to communicate with the dead, because of course that's what you do when you're a grieving super genius 10-year-old. You don't build Legos, you build a spirit phone. Even at this stage, you can see the roots of what would define him: science and sorcery, forever intertwined. Most Marvel characters get one lane. Iron Man gets technology, Doctor Strange gets magic, but Doom decided he would have both, because if you're Victor Von Doom, why not? Now, here's the part that always fascinates me. Doom wasn't just some weirdo tinkering in a shack. His brilliance was recognized. He earned a scholarship to study in the United States at Empire State University. That's the same school that would churn out Peter Parker, Reed Richards, and half the Marvel brain trust. And it is here in the halls of Empire State that fate caught up with Victor Von Doom in the form of one very stretchy man. man, Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic himself. At this point, he was just a gifted student with a brain that was the only brain to outsmart Doom, but Doom would never admit Reed could match him, let alone surpass him. And yet, Reed was sharp enough to see something that Doom missed. Doom, obsessed with freeing his mother, was building a machine that could reach across dimensions to communicate with the dead. You know, the spirit phone I mentioned earlier. He believed that he had perfected it, calculated every angle. Reed took a peek at his notes and saw a flaw. Just a little one. Nothing Doom wanted to hear. Reed tried to warn him, but Victor brushed it off because Doom doesn't make mistakes. Doom doesn't get corrected. Doom doesn't listen to the nerd down the hall who has never seen tragedy in his life. So he powered it on anyway, and the whole thing blew up in his face. Literally. His machine overloaded, exploded, and left him scarred. Not ruined, not disfigured beyond recognition, but scarred enough that Victor Von Doom, perfectionist supreme, could no longer look in the mirror without seeing failure staring him back. If you ask Reed, this was the accident that ruined Victor's life. If you ask Doom, this was Reed's fault forever, because in Doom's mind, it couldn't have been his mistake. It had to be sabotage, or Reed misguiding him, or fate conspiring against him. Doom cannot accept the idea that he was wrong, and that moment, that stubborn refusal to admit fault, is what split them forever. Expelled from the university, humiliated, scarred, Victor left America behind. But here's the thing about Doom. Failure only makes him more dangerous. He wandered the world, searching for answers until he came upon a monastery in the mountains of Tibet. And the monks there, they saw something in him. Maybe it was his charisma, maybe it was his brilliance, or maybe it was just the sheer force of will radiating off of him. Whatever it was, they didn't just take him in, they helped him. They gave him tools, resources, and the means to create the thing that would become as iconic as his name, the armor. This is the moment Victor Von Doom ceased being a man and became something more. He forged a suit of power armor unlike anything the world had ever seen, and with it, he cast his old self aside. He put on the mask, not after his scars had healed, not after carefully fitting it, but immediately, while the metal was still hot from the forge. If his scars weren't bad enough already, they were now burned permanently into his skin. Some versions of the story suggest his face wasn't even that badly damaged before this, just a few scars. But his pride couldn't stand imperfection. Doom couldn't live with being anything less than flawless. So he burned away the last trace of Victor Von Doom and emerged fully as Dr. Doom. When he returned to Latveria, he didn't slip quietly into obscurity. He didn't become a hermit tinkering with machines in a cave. He staged a revolution. He overthrew the corrupt monarchy and took the throne for himself. From that point on, Latveria belonged to Doom. And here's where it gets really interesting. Doom isn't just some cartoonish dictator. He didn't run Latveria into the ground. In fact, under his rule, the country flourished. No poverty, no crime, no hunger. The people of this country lived better than many free nations, but they lived under his absolute control. Step out of line, and Doom's iron fist reminded you who was in charge. It's a dictatorship, yes, but an efficient one, which makes him harder to dismiss as just evil to his people. Doom isn't just a tyrant, he's a savior. He's the one who gave them stability when no one else would, which makes you wonder, if you lived in Latveria, would you really want to rebel? That's Doom in a nutshell. Equal part terrifying tyrant and oddly effective ruler. A man whose personal flaws are catastrophic, but whose vision, in some twisted way, does bring results. That tension is what makes him one of the greatest villains Marvel has ever created. His story is dark, personal, full of mistakes, and driven by desire to not just do better, but to be perfect. In the upcoming Avengers movie, I truly hope they don't nerf him him or shed him of his personal issues. Doom can and has been a villain so powerful he literally reset the fabric of the Marvel multiverse, but more on that later. Doom may have been crowned the ruler of Latveria, but being king of a small Eastern European country was never going to be enough for him. Doom doesn't think small. Doom doesn't stop at stable economy, no crime, free healthcare. Those things are just warm-ups, practice swings. What Doom really wanted, what he always wanted, was to prove himself superior to Reed Richards, to the Fantastic Four, to literally anyone who thought they might stand taller than him. And of course, if you're trying to prove you're better than everyone, eventually the bar you have to clear becomes the entire everything that exists. Not just a kingdom, not just a planet, or even the universe. Everything. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about that rivalry, because it's impossible to understand Doom without understanding Reed Richards. These two are like magnets. They repel each other, but at the same time, they can't exist without constantly pulling at one another. The Fantastic Four is Marvel's first family, and Doom has been at their throats since practically day one. His very first appearance, all the way back in Fantastic Four, issue number 5 in 1962, set the tone. Doom arrives with a plan so audacious, so bizarre, that you can't help but respect the confidence. He literally kidnaps the team and sends them back in time to steal Blackbeard's treasure. Yes, that Blackbeard. It's the kind of plan that sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud, but when you remember this is Doom, it kind of makes sense. Doom doesn't just want wealth, he wants artifacts, relics, things that tie him into the fabric of history itself. Why rob a bank when you can bend time to your will? That was the blueprint for Doom's style of villainy. He doesn't rob jewelry stores, he doesn't pull smash and grabs. His plans always involve sorcery, time travel, mind-bending machines, or cosmic power. Doom doesn't settle for the possible, he always aims for the impossible. And if Reed Richards happens to be in the way, all the better, because humiliating Reed is the cherry on top of the cake. The scar from their college days never healed. In fact, you could argue Reed lives rent-free in Doom's head, maybe more than anyone else in the Marvel universe. Everything Reed achieves, Doom needs to prove he could do it better. Reed stretches his body, Doom stretches reality. Reed builds a rocket to space, Doom builds a time machine. Reed protects the world, Doom conquers the world. There's an irony there, of course. For all of Doom's genius and all of his power, his obsession with proving Reed wrong keeps him locked in the role of villain. If he could just let go of that rivalry, he might actually achieve half the things he brags about. But that's Doom's tragedy. He can't. Pride and ego won't let him move on. Now, here's something you don't always see in the movies or cartoons. Doom isn't just a man of science. He's not just a Tony Stark with a mean streak. He's also a sorcerer, one of the most powerful magic users in the Marvel universe. Remember his mother's connection to Mephisto? That haunted him all his life. Science could take him to the stars, but magic was the tool he believed could help him break into the afterlife itself, to bargain or battle for his mother's soul. So Doom became a master of both disciplines. On one hand, he builds robots, power armor, and doomsday devices. On the other hand, he casts spells, summons demons, and wrestles with gods. It's a terrifying combo. Imagine Batman's brain inside Iron Man's suit with Doctor Strange's spellbook tucked under his arm, and you've got Dr. Doom. This guy's toolkit is so vast that whenever he shows up, the heroes never quite know what angle he's coming from. Is this going to be one of his giant laser pointed at Manhattan weeks? Or is it going to be his summoning dark gods to enslave reality weeks? You can never tell. And honestly, sometimes he does both just to show off. One of Doom's most fascinating qualities is his absolute conviction. He never wavers. He never questions whether he might to be wrong. That makes him terrifying because there's no bargaining with someone who is 100% sure they're right all of the time. But it also makes him strangely inspiring. Doom believes in himself in a way that most of us never could. Imagine having the confidence of Doctor Doom. Imagine walking into a room convinced that not only are you the smartest person there, but that you should obviously be in charge. Imagine never once having imposter syndrome. That's Doom. If you told Doom the sky was blue, he'd lecture you on how you're wrong, then build a weather machine to prove it should be green instead, assuming he respected your opinion, which for almost everyone, he did not. And most of the time, Doom is not wrong. There are entire storylines where Doom takes control of Earth, and believe it or not, things actually get better. Poverty ends, wars stop, diseases wiped out. The catch, of course, is that you're living under Doom's watchful eye 24/7, and freedom of speech is basically non-existent. But if you're measuring success by the metrics of human survival, Doom kind of perfects it, and that's what separates him from most villains. His way actually works. It's just, horrifying. This video has gone on way longer than I thought it would when I was writing this out, so I'm gonna make this a two-parter. Thank you for watching, and yeah, I will see you in part 2. Bye.